समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
Hi, and thank you for joining this special three-part investigative series in The Print on the case that more than anything else has cast a shadow over the India-United States relationship, and that's the alleged murder for hire operation carried out by Delhi businessman and purported R&AW agent Nikhil Gupta. Nikhil Gupta's trial has now been scheduled for March 2026 after protracted differences between him and his lawyer. But in the meanwhile, I, along with my colleagues Bismi Taskin and Mayank Kumar, have poured through thousands of pages of court documents to get a picture of what actually happened. As you'll see in this three-part series, the answer isn't about top spies conducting brilliant covert operations. It's almost like dark comedy. Assistant United States Attorney Camille Fletcher had just one question for the Drug Enforcement Administration agents she was talking to in Prague. Is he talking? He did, replied Drug Enforcement Agency Officer Mark Franks, going on to use a colorful colloquialism for useless conversations. But he was playing FF games. Some of you who are familiar with Generation Z language will know what he was talking about. The Indian narcotics dealer they had just arrested at Prague airport had allegedly tried to mislead officers on the identity of the person who'd recruited him for a murder for hire operation, demanded to make a call home, and then refused to give straight answers to questions. But there was one important fact. New Delhi resident Nikhil Gupta, who's now facing trials on murder for hire charges relating to an attempt on Sikh separatist Gurpatwant Pannun, didn't know at the time. The New York Police Department and the Drug Enforcement Agency had been tracking Nikhil Gupta for over a decade, recording his calls and messages, court records show. The date for pre-trial proceedings has now been decided. The trial's been set for March 2026, but we can already get a very good idea of how this debacle came about. In prosecution documents, there's this part of the story. Gupta was introduced to the CS, I'm quoting here, confidential source, who was posing as an international narcotics trafficker in or about 2013. This is what prosecutors have told the New York trial court. Gupta told the confidential source that he was an international narcotics trafficker and money launderer. So 2013, just two criminals allegedly talking to each other. One of those criminals is, of course, a informer for the police. Multiple attempts made by the Print to reach Gupta's family seeking a response on specific disclosures made in these prosecution documents yielded no results. The Print even tried to reach Gupta directly through communication services which are available to prisoners in the United States, but didn't get a reply. We paid $15 for that prison communication service account, by the way. And this report will be, of course, updated if and when we get a response through any of these channels. Our multiple emails to the team of court-appointed legal counsel seeking a response went unanswered. That's his lawyers in the United States. But the documents tell a story. Remember, of course, that to caveat everything you're listening to with the words alleged or purportedly, this is the police's version of accounts. Drug Enforcement Agency or DEA agents handling the Pannu investigation, the prosecution records show, were able to identify Gupta through their databases. and used the relationship with the informant to monitor the plot. Apparently oblivious to the possibility that Gupta's contacts might be compromised, his alleged research and analysis handlers communicated their intentions and plans openly, using easily monitored Gmail and WhatsApp app accounts. And there'll be more of that in part 2 of this series. Landing at Vaclav Havel Airport on the evening of June 30th, 2023, the first thing Nikhil Gupta did was send a text message, sharing his new international travel number with a friend, the supposed drug dealer he'd known since 2013. The men were to meet in Prague to discuss drug and money laundering deals, the prosecution documents allege, and also to iron out problems that had emerged in finding a hitman to kill Pannu. Arrested by Czech authorities, the documents show Gupta at first tried to hide his connection with his alleged R&AW handler Vikas Yadav, who's also facing trial in New Delhi. Gupta claimed Amanat, the code name used by Yadav, met him wearing a mask, hat, glasses and long-sleeve t-shirts, making him very hard to identify. And Gupta claimed Amanat was, I quote, tall, possibly in his 40s, possibly from India and Pakistan. Gupta, the prosecution documents say, stated he did not know anything else about Amanat and he would most likely go into hiding once he found out that Gupta had been arrested, the prosecution documents state. The DEA, however, already knew a lot more than Gupta thought at this point. The friend in New York he'd been working with was in fact a police informant reporting to an undercover New York Police Department officer. For the last 10 years, as Gupta allegedly plotted various international credit card frauds and drug trafficking schemes, the New York police had been listening in patiently, waiting to see where this trail might lead. Even as they discussed the murder for hire of the victim, prosecutors alleged, Gupta and the confidential source also negotiated a drug and weapons deal. Gupta flew to Prague, where he was arrested, in part to meet the confidential source and finalize this deal. Little detail is available about just how the informant first met Gupta and where. But prosecution documents allege that the Delhi import-export business owner introduced himself as, I quote, an international narcotics trafficker and money launderer. The two men prosecutors claim attempted to negotiate narcotics deals on several occasions, once agreeing to a meeting in Sri Lanka to negotiate a heroin shipment to the United States. The planned meeting in Sri Lanka, the prosecution documents claim, never took place. 4 years later, in the summer of 2017, Gupta traveled to the United States and met with the informant in New York. During the course of this meeting, Gupta is alleged to have claimed that, I quote, he had contacts in Afghanistan who could supply the informant's drug cartel with assault rifles, machine guns, explosives and other heavy weaponry. At one stage, the documents record, Gupta sent the informant photographs of the weapons he could supply. However, the United States authorities, even at this point, did not seek to arrest him. Possibly because Gupta hadn't demonstrated the ability to actually organize the trafficking of weapons. The arrest in Prague only came when authorities in New York decided they had enough evidence to secure a conviction in court on a murder-to-hire charge. To anyone who reads the news, one Indian intelligence officer ThePrint spoke to noted that discussion on weapons should have been a bit of a red flag. Mexico's drug cartels, this officer noted, buy a copious supply of weapons from the United States and Latin American sources. They don't need someone to be shipping them guns from Afghanistan. Large-scale imports of weapons, a 2020 United States government study stated, have also taken place from the United States as well as Austria, Argentina, Brazil, China and Turkey. These cartels are known to be equipped with very sophisticated equipment, including armored vehicles, drones, and even submarines. Through the visit in 2017, the prosecution documents state, Gupta made several calls to the informant, asking him if he could help pick up cash from Cuba and deliver it to New York or London. Gupta allegedly suggested the cash could be brought safely if the informant used several couriers, each of whom carried $7,000 to $8,000 each, which is below the $10,000 limit that customs authorities had at American airports. According to prosecutors, and I quote, Gupta also stated that in January 2017, he had traveled to Cuba and collected $10,000 without any issue and without having to declare the funds. From the prosecution document, it thus appears that Gupta's main business might have been relatively small-time money laundering rather than big drug deals and weapons deals. In one meeting, Gupta is alleged to have told the informant that he had smuggled credit cards with limits running cumulatively into millions of dollars from Cuba to Los Angeles by taping the stolen cards to his ankles. Gupta also allegedly informed his criminal contact in New York that he had moved $50 million from Ecuador to Panama. True or not, we don't know. Later, prosecutors say Gupta sent text messages, and I quote again, asking the confidential source if the CS could help arrange a $30,000 to $40,000 payment in Romania on Gupta's behalf, and Gupta in turn would make the payment in New York. Even though none of these conversations actually led to a transaction, an actual business deal, Gupta seems to have remained very trusting of his informant, who he thought of as his friend. Gupta's involvement in the alleged plot to murder Pannu, according to the Drug Enforcement Agency, began in 2021. In the course of a visit to Uzbekistan, Gupta told police in the Czech Republic he was informed that his appearance was required in a court case in India related to robbery. There is, interestingly, no record of any first information report or criminal investigation against Gupta in India. And I quote from what one court filing in these documents says, Gupta did not understand why he was sought by police as he was not in the country. But he said this was not unusual as India's police force is corrupt, i.e. he was saying that the police were just harassing him for money. Yadav was at this time engaged in litigation with the Cabinet Secretariat. He had been engaged in a case since 2017 when it issued an administrative order claiming that Yadav's recruitment from the Central Reserve Police Force into the Research and Analysis Wing was illegal. With 6 other officers recruited along with him from the CRPF, Yadav had moved the Central Administrative Tribunal. The CAT bench ordered that the officers be reinstated after the Cabinet Secretariat reversed its earlier position in October 2023, giving Yadav the designation of Senior Field Officer with back pay and seniority. Following the threat of prosecution by police in India, according to the prosecution documents in New York, Gupta began to ask friends if they knew people who might help him get out of the case. This process, according to Gupta's purported testimony to Czech police after his arrest, led to a phone call from Vikas Yadav, allegedly saying he could make the case disappear if Gupta could help him find a hitman in New York. As Yadav and Gupta began their purported conversations on the plot to kill Pannu, the DA had full access to conversations. It was already monitoring Gupta for years. Filings made to a grand jury in the United States, which decides whether or not people can be prosecuted, state that the DEA listened in as Gupta communicated with the informant or confidential source over phone, video and chat in anticipation of completing the murder for hire. According to the documents, during video calls, Gupta's face has been fully visible and law enforcement agents have been able to compare the person on the call with the pictures on a law enforcement database. For his part, Vikas Yadav was identified as an employee of the Research and Analysis Wing after the DEA obtained a warrant to search Gmail accounts linked to the phone number he used to communicate with Gupta. That Gmail account, prosecutors allege, was linked to a second Gmail account where Gupta had, for some reason, stored his pay slips, tax returns, employment-related information, and other sensitive confidential data. This carelessly maintained trove of documents, which is a violation of basic operational security procedures, allowed the Drug Enforcement Administration to rapidly develop a profile of Yadav and his ties to the Research and Analysis Wing. That material is now critical evidence in a case that could strain India-US ties for months, maybe years to come. We'll be looking at what the court documents tell us about how the Drug Enforcement Agency could establish links between the plot to assassinate the Sikh separatist Gurpatwant Pannun and the Research and Analysis Wing.